Anya's voice cut through the music. She came running from the
Don't eat
direction of
it.
the kitchen,
This
her
food
small
is poison.
shoes skidding across the polished hardwood floor. Stop. Don't eat that. One hand held the side of her dress so she would not trip. The other pointed straight at the plate in front of Julian Ashworth. Don't eat it, she said, breathless but clear. Please, sir, stop right now. That food has poison in it. You can't eat it. Julian Ashworth sat at the head of the long table. A silver fork paused in his hand. On the plate before him was a serving of roasted sea bass under a pale lemon cream sauce, the special dish his fiancée had proudly chosen for their engagement dinner. For one long second, Julian did not move. Across the room, Maria Santos, Anya's mother, froze near the service doorway. Anya, Maria said, hurrying toward her daughter. Her voice was low, frightened, and full of apology before she even reached the table. Baby, come here right now. But Anya did not move. She put something in it, Anya said. Celeste Dubois rose slowly from the chair beside Julian. She wore an ivory dress, elegant and soft, with a diamond engagement ring flashing under the chandelier. Until that moment, she had looked like a woman stepping into the happiest night of her life. Now her smile tightened at the edges. Excuse me, Celeste said. Anya pointed toward the kitchen. You went back there. You had a little white packet. You poured it into his sauce. A murmur passed through the guests. It was meant to be a private engagement dinner. No reporters, no cameras, no strangers, just family, friends, trust, and celebration. Celeste placed one hand against her chest as though the accusation itself had struck her. That is an ugly thing to say, she said, her voice still controlled, but no longer sweet. Anya, I don't know what you think you saw, but you do not run into a room full of guests and accuse me of poisoning my future husband. Maria reached Anya and put both hands on her shoulders. Mr. Ashworth, Miss Dubois, I am so sorry, Maria said. She must have misunderstood something. She was supposed to stay near the breakfast nook. I didn't misunderstand, Anya said. Her voice shook, but she did not back down. I saw it. I saw everything. Celeste gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You saw everything, she repeated. A little girl hiding near the kitchen now knows more than the adults preparing dinner. I wasn't hiding to be bad, Anya said. I was by the pantry. You looked around first. Then you opened your purse. A man near the middle of the table leaned toward his wife and muttered, she probably wants attention. Another guest, a silver-haired foundation donor, shook his head. Children do that at big events. Too much excitement. She may be jealous. Someone else whispered. Her mother works here. Maybe she wanted to be part of the party. Maria heard it. Her shoulders stiffened, but she kept her eyes down. Anya heard it, too. Her small face hardened with the stubborn dignity of a child who knew she was being doubted, but had not yet learned to surrender. I don't want attention, she said. I'm telling the truth. Julian set his fork down. Anya, he said carefully. Look at me. She did. Are you sure you didn't see one of the chefs adding seasoning? Flour, salt, maybe powdered sugar. No, sir. It came from Miss Celeste's purse. Celeste turned sharply toward Julian. Julian, surely you are not entertaining this. I'm asking a question, he said. You are asking a child whether your fiancé poisoned you at our engagement dinner. Her voice rose slightly. Then she caught herself and looked around the table as if embarrassed to be forced into such a position. Do you hear how insane that sounds? Julian looked down at the plate. Then he glanced around the table. Other guests had already begun eating. Some plates were half empty. Glasses had been raised. Napkins had been unfolded. Nobody looked sick. Nobody was coughing, sweating, or clutching their stomach. Anya, he said more gently now. Everyone else is eating. Nothing has happened to anyone. That plate is different, Anya said at once. Mrs. Eleanor said it was yours. It has the little gold flower on the side. At the service doorway, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, the longtime house manager, went very still. Her eyes moved to Julian's plate. Anya was right. Julian's dish had been prepared separately because he preferred a lighter sauce and no cracked pepper. Celeste saw Eleanor's expression and spoke quickly. Yes, I checked his plate, Celeste said. Because I wanted tonight to be perfect. I checked the flowers, the wine, the dessert, and yes, Julian's dinner. That is what a woman does when she loves a man and wants their engagement night to be beautiful. She turned her gaze back to Anya. The softness disappeared. But this is rude. It is disrespectful and frankly it is cruel. I am standing here as Julian's future wife in front of people who love us and you are accusing me of trying to kill him. Anya's fingers tightened around her cloth doll. I'm not trying to be cruel, she said. I'm trying to stop him. Celeste's eyes narrowed. Enough. Maria lowered her voice. Anya, please come with me. But Anya suddenly moved. Before Maria could stop her, before Julian understood what she was doing, Anya grabbed the edge of his plate with both hands and pulled it away from him. Gasps rose around the table. Anya, Maria cried. Give that back, Celeste snapped. Anya held the plate against her chest as carefully as she could, keeping it level so the sauce would not spill. He can't eat this. Julian pushed back his chair. Anya, he said, now firm. Hand me the plate. No, sir. Anya, it'll hurt you. Julian stepped toward her and reached for the plate. Anya turned her small body away, but he caught the edge before it slipped. For one tense moment, their hands were on the same dish. Anya pulled back with fear. "Let go," he said. "Please don't eat it. Let go of the plate." She hesitated. Julian took that moment to pull the dish firmly from her hands, not violently, but decisively. The plate returned to the table with a soft scrape against the white tablecloth. Anya stood frozen, her hands now empty. Celeste pressed a hand over her mouth as if she were the one being harmed. "My God," she said. "She tried to take your dinner out of your hands. Julian, this is not normal." Beatrice Ashworth, Julian's mother, watched her son closely. She had not spoken yet. At 70, she had lived long enough to distrust both panic and performance. Her eyes moved from Anya's stiff little posture to Celeste's trembling hand, then to the plate. Julian looked at the guests. Their faces were tense, expectant, embarrassed. He could feel the evening slipping away from him. He could feel Celeste beside him, wounded and furious. He could feel Anya's desperate stare. Most of all, he wanted to believe that the woman wearing his ring had not walked into his kitchen and tried to poison him. So he picked up his fork. "Enough," Julian said, though not unkindly. "The food is fine, Julian," his mother said quietly. He looked at her. "Mom, it's all right." Celeste touched his arm. "You don't have to prove anything." But the way she said it made it sound as though she very much needed him too. Julian cut off a small piece of fish, gathered a little sauce, and raised the fork. Anya stared at him, silent now, her whole body tight with fear. "Just a bite," Julian said. "Then we can stop frightening each other." He ate. A few seconds passed, then 10, then 20. Nothing happened. Julian swallowed, set his fork down, and looked around the table with a measured smile. "There," he said. "The dish is fine. There is no problem with the food." A few guests exhaled. Someone gave a nervous laugh. The silver-haired donor shook his head as though the matter had been settled. Celeste closed her eyes dramatically and leaned one hand against the back of Julian's chair. "Oh, thank God," she whispered loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Julian, I was so scared. I cannot believe this is happening tonight." She turned slightly, pressing her fingers to her lips. Her breathing quickened. She looked pale now, but not in the way Julian did a minute later. Hers was a public kind of panic arranged for the room to witness. "I need air," Celeste said. "I feel like I'm the one being attacked." Anya watched her carefully. 1 minute passed. Julian's smile faded. The first cramp came low in his stomach. He shifted in his chair and pressed a fist lightly against his abdomen. At first, he thought it was nerves. Then heat rose up the back of his neck. The room seemed too bright. The scent of roses, butter, lemon, and wine pressed against him all at once. He swallowed. His mouth had gone dry. Beatrice saw it first. "Julian," she said. "I'm fine," he answered automatically. But he was not. A wave of nausea rolled through him, sudden and unmistakable. He pushed his chair back, but the motion made the room tilt. His face lost color. One hand gripped the edge of the table. Celeste rushed toward him with a cry so loud several guests flinched. "Julian. Oh my God, Julian." She grabbed his shoulder, then his arm, then looked wildly around the room. "Somebody do something. Why is no one helping him? Samuel, help him. Doctor." Samuel Klein was already moving. "Step back, Celeste," he said. "What's happening to him?" Celeste demanded, her voice breaking into a high, frantic pitch. "He was fine. He was perfectly fine. I don't understand. Julian, look at me. Please look at me. Don't do this. Not tonight." Beatrice stood, her chair sliding back hard. "Samuel," she said with the command of a mother who had no interest in anyone's performance. "Get to my son, doctor." Klein reached Julian and checked his pulse, then his pupils. Julian leaned forward, breathing through his nose, fighting the urge to vomit. "What did he eat, doctor?" Klein asked. Anya answered before anyone else could. "That," she said, pointing at the plate. "Only that, doctor." Klein turned sharply to the table. "Nobody touches that plate. Nobody removes a glass, a fork, a napkin, nothing." Celeste covered her face with both hands. "This is a nightmare. This is supposed to be our engagement dinner." Beatrice looked at her then, really looked at her, and something cold moved across her face. "Celeste," she said, "move away from my son." Celeste dropped her hands. "Beatrice, I'm scared, too. Move." Celeste stepped back. "Doctor." Klein gave instructions quickly. Julian needed to be moved, monitored, and taken to the hospital. The symptoms were not catastrophic yet, but they were wrong enough to make every trained instinct in the doctor's body sharpen. An ambulance was called, though Julian's private security also prepared a car in case they could move faster. Guests stood in stunned clusters. Some stared at Anya now with a different expression. Maria pulled Anya close, but Anya did not hide. She stood quietly beside her mother, watching the adults finally move with the urgency she had tried to give them minutes earlier. Julian was helped from the chair. As Dr. Klein and 2 security men guided him toward the hall, he looked once toward Anya. Their eyes met. He said nothing. He was too sick to speak, but the look on his face had changed. The plate remained on the table beneath the chandelier, the lemon sauce cooling around the place where one bite. had been taken. By the time Julian Ashworth reached the hospital, the engagement dinner had become something no amount of money could cover up. The ambulance rolled through the private emergency entrance, its red lights flashing across the glass doors. Dr. Samuel Klein stayed beside Julian, one hand braced near the stretcher, giving short instructions to the medical team as they moved. He took one small bite. Dr. Klein said symptoms started within a minute. Abdominal pain, nausea, sweating, dizziness, no known food allergies. Julian tried to lift his head. I can walk. His mother, Beatrice Ashworth, stepped in beside him before anyone else could answer. You will do no such thing. Mom, don't mom me while you look like a man who just lost a boxing match to his own dinner. Under any other circumstance, he might have smiled. But another wave of nausea turned his face gray, and he closed his eyes against the bright hospital lights. Behind them came the rest of the Ashworth family, moving in a tense, frightened cluster. Julian's younger sister, Diana, hurried in with her husband. His uncle Leonard, a retired judge who rarely showed emotion, walked with his jaw clenched and his coat thrown over one arm. Two cousins followed, whispering to each other with the stiff fear of people who had spent their lives around wealth, but not real danger. And then came Maria and Anya. Maria held Anya's hand tightly as they entered the hospital lobby. Anya stood close to her mother's side, clutching her cloth doll, watching the doctors wheel Julian away. Maria had not wanted to come. She had said so 3 times before leaving the mansion. Mrs. Vance, this is family business. She had whispered to Eleanor near the front hallway. We shouldn't be there. But Beatrice Ashworth had heard her. The older woman had turned, her face pale, but her voice steady. Your daughter tried to save my son tonight. That makes you family enough to come. Maria had not known what to say after that. Now in the hospital waiting area, the separation between worlds was painfully clear. The Ashworths were directed toward a private family lounge with leather chairs, fresh coffee, bottled water, and a nurse assigned only to them. Maria paused at the doorway, unsure if she was allowed to enter. Beatrice noticed. Mrs. Santos, she said, softer than before. Please come in. Maria hesitated. Ma'am, we can wait outside. No, Beatrice said. You and Anya, stay where I can see you. Anya climbed into a chair near the corner, her feet not touching the floor. Diana Ashworth sat across from her, still holding her phone in one hand. She studied Anya for a moment, then leaned forward. You're Anya, right? Anya nodded. I'm Julian's sister. Diana's voice trembled despite her attempt to sound composed. You were the one who told him not to eat. Yes, ma'am. Diana swallowed. What did you see? Maria stiffened. Miss Ashworth, she's already had a long night. I know, Diana said quickly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to push. Anya looked down at her doll. I saw Miss Celeste put white powder in his food. The room grew quiet. Uncle Leonard stood near the window with his arms folded. Did anyone call the police? Beatrice answered without looking away from the hallway. Arthur Chen is preserving the scene. Samuel ordered the plate untouched. Security is copying the cameras. Leonard's eyes narrowed. Good, because if this is what it looks like, this is no longer a family matter. Maria heard the words and felt Anya's hand tighten around hers. Inside the exam room, nurses worked quickly. Julian was connected to a monitor. Blood was drawn. Medication was given to settle the nausea and cramping. Dr. Klein watched every reading with the focused calm of a man who had treated Julian for years and had never seen anything like this. After some time, Julian's breathing steadied. Color slowly returned to his face. The worst of the nausea passed, leaving behind weakness, anger, and a humiliation that sat deeper than the sickness. Dr. Klein leaned over him. You're stable. Julian opened his eyes. That sounded like the good version of a bad sentence. It is. Klein pulled off his gloves. You were lucky. Very lucky. How lucky? Klein paused. You took one bite. If you had eaten the full serving, we might be having this conversation in intensive care. Or not at all. Julian turned his head toward the ceiling. Anya's voice came back to him. Don't eat it. He saw her small hands on the plate. He saw himself taking it back. That memory struck harder than the pain in his stomach. A nurse stepped in. Your family is waiting. Your mother is threatening to reorganize the entire hospital if she doesn't see you soon. Klein sighed. That sounds like Beatrice. A few minutes later, Julian was moved to a private room. The lights were dimmer there. The windows looked out over the city where traffic moved in thin streams of red and white. Julian lay propped against the pillows, an IV line taped to his hand, his suit jacket gone, his shirt collar open. Beatrice entered first. For a moment, she was not the iron-willed matriarch of the Ashworth family. She was simply a mother looking at her son in a hospital bed. You scared me, she said. I'm sorry, I am not interested in apologies yet. Her mouth tightened, almost a smile, then faded. She sat beside him and touched his hand. Why did you eat it, Julian? He looked away. Because I wanted to believe Anya was wrong. Beatrice did not answer immediately. Then she said, wanting a child to be mistaken is not the same as proving she is. I know. Do you? He closed his eyes. I took the plate from her. His mother's face softened. Yes, you did. The door opened again, and Diana stepped in with Uncle Leonard. They both looked relieved, though Leonard hid his behind a hard expression. Still with us? Leonard asked. Unfortunately for my enemies, Julian said weakly. Diana came to the other side of the bed. You look awful. Good to see you, too. I'm touched. The small exchange eased the room for half a breath. Then reality returned. Leonard lowered his voice. Samuel says the police may need to be involved. Julian looked at him. Not may. Will. Beatrice watched him closely. You're sure? I became sure about 60 seconds after I told everyone the food was fine. No one laughed. A knock sounded at the door. Maria stood outside with Anya beside her. Maria looked as though she wanted to disappear into the wall. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Ashworth said. I did, Beatrice said. Come in. Maria entered slowly. Anya stayed close to her mother, doll tucked under one arm. Her eyes went straight to Julian. He looked back at her for a long moment. The room seemed to understand that something important was passing between them. Julian spoke first. Anya. Yes, sir. I should have listened to you. Anya did not look proud. She did not look pleased to be right. She looked like a child who had been carrying something too heavy and was finally allowed to set part of it down. I tried to stop you, she said. I know. I took the plate back. Yes, Julian said quietly. I did. Diana looked away, blinking fast. Maria pressed her lips together. Julian continued. That was my mistake, not yours. Anya thought about that. Are you going to be okay? Doctor. Klein says I will. She nodded once, serious and small. Good. The door opened before anyone could say more. Celeste Dubois entered with a tissue in one hand and tears shining on her face. Julian, she breathed. Everyone turned. Celeste had changed nothing about her appearance except the expression. Her ivory dress was still perfect. Her hair still fell neatly over one shoulder. The engagement ring still flashed on her finger. But now she looked fragile, devastated, almost theatrical in her grief. She rushed toward the bed. Oh, thank God, she said, her voice breaking. I was losing my mind out there. No one would tell me anything. I thought I had lost you. Beatrice stood. Celeste stopped just short of the bed, as if noticing the room's coldness for the first time. Why is everyone looking at me like that? She asked, pressing the tissue to her mouth. Julian, please say something. Julian studied her. This was the woman who had stood beside him at charity galas. The woman who had kissed his cheek beneath camera flashes. The woman who had helped plan tonight's dinner and smiled while Anya begged him not to eat. Now she looked like the victim of the evening. I'm alive, Julian said. Celeste gave a wounded little laugh through her tears. That's all you have to say to me. What would you like me to say? She stepped closer. That you know I would never hurt you. That you know this whole thing is some terrible misunderstanding. Maria felt Anya shift beside her. Celeste noticed the child and seemed to fold even further into sorrow. And she's here, Celeste whispered as though Anya's presence injured her. Julian, I cannot believe this. That little girl accused me in front of everyone. She turned our engagement dinner into a nightmare. And now she's standing in your hospital room as if she belongs here. Beatrice's voice was sharp, careful. Celeste looked at her. Beatrice, I am the one being accused of poisoning the man I love. Am I not allowed to be upset? You are allowed to be upset, Leonard said from near the wall. You are not allowed to intimidate a witness. Celeste stared at him. A witness. She is a child. Anya lifted her chin. I saw you. Celeste's tears paused only for a second. Then she covered her face again. This is cruel. I checked the kitchen because I wanted everything perfect. I touched the plate. Yes, maybe I did, but not like that. Not the way she says. Julian, you know me. Julian did not answer. Celeste moved closer to the bed, her voice softening into something intimate. Baby, look at me. We were supposed to announce our wedding date tonight. We were supposed to be happy. Please don't let fear and confusion destroy us. Julian looked at his mother, then at Maria, then at Anya. Finally, Julian turned back to Celeste. Doctor. Klein ordered the plate preserved. Celeste blinked. Of course, that makes sense. The food is being tested. I would expect nothing less. The kitchen cameras are being pulled. That was when something changed. Not much. Not enough for everyone to see, but Julian saw it. Beatrice saw it, too. A slight tightening around Celeste's mouth. A small delay before the next breath. Then she recovered. Good, Celeste said. Then the cameras will prove I did nothing wrong. Maybe they will, Julian said. The room held its breath. Celeste's tears returned, but now they seemed to arrive with effort. I can't do this, she whispered. I came here because I love you and I am being treated like a criminal. No one called you that, Leonard said. You didn't have to. She turned toward the door, then stopped and looked back at Julian. Pitiful and beautiful under the hospital lights. When you're ready to remember who stood by you, call me. She left before anyone could answer. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Anya said very quietly, she looked scared when you said cameras. Julian looked at her. Maria touched Anya's shoulder. Baby, no, Julian said, let her speak. Anya met his eyes. She didn't look scared when you were sick. She looked scared when you said cameras. Beatrice slowly sat back down. Doctor. Klein returned just then, holding a chart. He looked around the room, sensing the shift. Did I miss something? Julian's gaze stayed on the door Celeste had closed behind her. No, he said. I think we're just beginning. That night, as the hospital settled into its quieter hours and the machines beside Julian's bed kept steady rhythm, the Ashworth family remained close. Maria and Anya were given a small room nearby to rest. Though Maria sat awake for a long time, one hand on her daughter's back, staring at the wall. Julian did not sleep much either. Pain had brought him to the hospital. Anya's warning had followed him there. But Celeste's face when he mentioned the cameras stayed with him most of all. By dawn, he knew 3 things with a clarity that made his stomach turn again. Someone had put something in his food. A child had seen it happen. And the woman he was supposed to marry was far more afraid of the truth than she had ever been of losing him. Morning came slowly to the private hospital suite, not with birdsong or sunlight, but with the soft beeping of monitors and the muffled footsteps of nurses changing shifts. Julian Ashworth was awake before anyone entered the room. He had slept in pieces, never long enough to forget where he was. The IV line tugged lightly at the back of his hand whenever he moved. His stomach still felt tender, as if a fist had been pressed there all night. But the nausea had eased, and his mind, finally clear of pain, had begun to do what it had done all his adult life. Line up facts, question motives, and look for the weak point in a lie. There were too many facts now to ignore. Anya had warned him. He had eaten. His body had reacted almost immediately. Celeste had seemed more wounded by the accusation than frightened by his illness. And when he mentioned the kitchen cameras, her face had changed only for a second, but Julian had built an empire by noticing seconds other men dismissed. A quiet knock came at the door. Doctor. Samuel Klein stepped in, wearing the same tired suit pants from the night before and a fresh white coat over his shirt. He carried a tablet in one hand and a paper cup of coffee in the other. You look better, Klein said. I feel like I lost an argument with my own arrogance. That may be the most accurate diagnosis you've given yourself. Julian shifted against the pillows. Do we know what it was? Not yet. The full toxicology report will take time. The preliminary blood work shows irritation consistent with ingestion of a foreign substance, but I'm not going to guess on record. You're stable. Your heart rhythm is normal. No organ distress. That's the good news. And the bad. Klein lowered the tablet. The speed of your symptoms bothers me. This wasn't bad fish. It wasn't nerves. Something triggered that reaction. Julian looked toward the window. The city beyond the glass looked clean in the morning light, almost innocent. If I'd eaten the whole plate, Julian said. Klein did not soften it. You would have been in serious trouble. Julian nodded once. He had already known, but hearing it from Samuel made the truth heavier. The door opened again before he could speak. Beatrice Ashworth came in with 2 paper cups of coffee, one in each hand. Dressed in the same clothes from the night before, except for a gray cardigan someone had brought from home. She looked composed because she believed composure was a duty, not because she felt it. I brought you coffee, she said to Klein. Not to Julian. Julian will drink whatever the nurses allow and be grateful. Julian gave her a tired look. I'm 40 years old. You are my son in a hospital bed. Age has been temporarily suspended. Klein accepted the coffee. Thank you, Beatrice. She took the chair beside Julian and studied him. Arthur Chen called. The plate is locked in the estate refrigerator under security watch. The utensils, glass, and napkin are bagged. The kitchen camera footage has been copied twice. Who has access? Julian asked. Arthur, Eleanor, and your head of security. No one else. Celeste. Beatrice's mouth tightened. She called 6 times. And I did not answer. Julian almost smiled again. Remind me never to get on your bad side. You are on it now. Temporarily. Before Julian could reply, a nurse appeared in the doorway. Mr. Ashworth, Mrs. Santos and Anya are outside. They weren't sure if this was a good time. Julian's expression changed. Beatrice noticed. Let them in. Maria entered first, holding Anya's hand. She had changed out of her service dress into jeans, a plain navy sweater, and a coat that looked too thin for the hospital's cold air. Anya wore a pink cardigan over her dress from the night before. Her cloth doll was tucked beneath her arm. She walked with the careful quiet of a child who had been told too often not to take up space. Maria stopped near the door. Good morning, Mr. Ashworth. We didn't want to disturb you. You're not disturbing me, Julian said. His voice was rougher than he wanted. Please come in. Anya looked at the machines beside the bed. Are those helping you? They are mostly annoying me, Julian said. But drive. Klein says that means I'm improving. Klein nodded solemnly. Complaining is often a positive sign. Anya came a few steps closer. Does your stomach still hurt? A little. Not like last night. She nodded, considering this with grave importance. Good. Maria placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Anya wanted to check on you before we went home. Julian looked from Maria to Anya. I'm glad you came. There's something I need to say. Maria's posture tightened as though bracing for blame. Julian saw it and hated that she had expected it. Anya, he said, last night you tried to warn me. You tried more than once. You even took the plate away from me. Anya looked down. You took it back. Yes, he said. I did. No one moved. Julian swallowed, feeling the shame of it settle in his throat. That was my mistake, not yours. I should have stopped. I should have listened. Anya lifted her eyes. You didn't believe me. No, Julian said. I didn't, and I am sorry. The apology was simple, but it changed the air in the room. Maria blinked as if apologies from men like Julian Ashworth were not things she had prepared herself to receive. Beatrice watched her son with a quiet expression that held both pain and approval. Anya did not rush to forgive him. Children often understood apologies better than adults did. They knew when words were just words and when they cost something. After a moment, she said, I wasn't trying to ruin your party. I know. Miss Celeste said I was being cruel. Julian's jaw tightened. You were not cruel. She said I was making up stories. You were not. Anya held her doll a little closer. I saw her. Julian leaned forward slightly, ignoring the pull of the IV. Can you tell me again? Only what you remember. Nobody is angry. Nobody is going to interrupt you. Maria looked uneasy. Mr. Ashworth, she's had a lot happen. She has, Julian said. And if you want me to stop, I will. But what Anya saw matters. I want her to know we're listening now. That last word landed softly. Now. Maria looked down at her daughter. Only if you want to, baby. Anya took a breath. I was coloring by the little table. Then I went to see the flowers because they were pretty. I saw Miss Celeste come into the kitchen. She didn't see me because I was by the pantry. Was anyone else in the kitchen? Klein asked gently. The cooks were by the stove. Mama was gone. Mrs. Eleanor was in the dining room. Julian nodded. What did Celeste do? She looked around first, Anya said. Like when somebody checks if they're alone. Then she opened her purse. It was shiny silver. She took out a little white paper thing. Not a jar, not a spoon, a packet. Beatrice's eyes sharpened. She opened it, Anya continued. And she put the white stuff in the sauce on your plate. Then she stirred it. With what? Klein asked. A spoon. Then she put the spoon under a towel. Julian looked at Klein. Klein looked back, already making a note on his tablet. Anya's brow furrowed as she concentrated. Then the man came. Julian's voice remained calm, though every nerve in him tightened. Tell me about the man. He was at the back door. He didn't come all the way in. He had a black jacket. Miss Celeste gave him an envelope. Did you hear what they said? Anya hesitated. Not all. The man said, tonight has to work. I remember. Because he sounded mad. Maria's hand went to her mouth. Beatrice stood slowly and walked toward the window, not because she wanted the view, but because her anger needed somewhere to go. Julian kept his eyes on Anya. Did Celeste see you? No, I don't think so. But later at the table, she looked at me like maybe she knew I knew. That sentence sat in the room like smoke. Doctor. Klein closed his tablet. Julian, this needs to go to law enforcement. It will, Julian said. But first, I want the food results and the camera footage. As if summoned by the words, Julian's phone buzzed on the table beside the bed. Beatrice picked it up and glanced at the screen. Arthur. Julian reached for it, put him on speaker. Beatrice tapped the screen. Arthur Chen's voice filled the room, calm but strained. Julian, I have Eleanor and security with me. We reviewed the kitchen footage. Julian sat a little straighter. Chen paused just long enough for everyone to feel it. The child's account matches the video. Maria closed her eyes. Anya did not smile. She only stood there small and still as if the truth being confirmed did not make it lighter. Chen continued. Celeste enters the kitchen at 7:42 p.m. She removes something from her purse, opens it, and appears to add it to the sauce on your plate. Anya is visible near the pantry door. At 7:44, an unidentified male appears at the rear service entrance. Celeste hands him what looks like an envelope. We don't have audio from that camera. Julian's face went cold. Save the footage in 3 places. One off-site. Nobody touches the original system. Already done, Chen said. The spoon. Eleanor found it under a folded towel near the prep station. Bagged. The packet not recovered yet. Julian looked toward Anya. She may have taken it with her. Chen understood. We'll check the trash, the sink, and exterior bins. Beatrice spoke then, her voice controlled but sharp. Arthur, Celeste is not to enter the house. She has already tried calling security. And, I told them she is barred from the property until further notice. Good, Julian said. Chen's voice lowered. Julian, there is something else. I don't want to get ahead of the evidence, but Eleanor remembered Celeste spent time in your study last week. She said Celeste claimed she was looking for an old engagement photo of your parents. Julian's eyes narrowed. There are no engagement photos of my parents in my study. I know. A silence followed. Julian ended the call after giving more instructions. When the room went quiet again, the truth felt larger than before. It was no longer a frightening accusation made during dinner. It had a timestamp, a camera angle, a spoon in a bag, a man at the back door. Julian looked at Anya. You told the truth. Anya answered softly. I said I did. The words were not rude. They were not proud. They were the plain statement of a child who had been made to defend reality. Julian felt something in his chest twist. You shouldn't have had to prove it this way, he said. Maria looked at him then. Really looked at him perhaps for the first time, not as an employer, but as a man who was beginning to understand a very old unfairness. Children like Anya often do, she said quietly. No one corrected her. A few minutes later, drive. Klein insisted Julian needed rest. Beatrice offered to have a car take Maria and Anya back to the estate, but Anya lingered near the bed. Julian noticed something else. Anya, when Miss Celeste came in here last night, she looked scared when you said cameras. You said she wasn't scared when I was sick. Beatrice turned from the window. Anya's voice stayed even. She was loud, but not scared. For a moment, even drive. Klein said nothing. Julian looked at the child who had seen too much and still spoke gently. Then he said, I believe you. This time he said it before another test, before another video, before another adult confirmed her words. Anya's shoulders lowered just a little. Outside the hospital window, morning had fully arrived. Cars moved along the street below. Somewhere in the building, a baby cried, a nurse laughed, and an elevator bell chimed as if the world had no idea that Julian Ashworth's life had split in two. Before last night, he had believed danger came from competitors, contracts, hostile takeovers, lawsuits, and men who smiled too broadly across boardroom tables. Now he knew danger could sit beside him in an ivory dress, wearing his ring, touching his arm, and waiting for him to take a bite. And the only person who had seen it clearly had been the little girl everyone else was ready to dismiss. Arthur Chen arrived at the hospital a little after 10 that morning with a leather briefcase in one hand and the look of a man who had not slept because the truth had kept him company all night. Julian was sitting up in bed when the attorney entered. His color had improved, but the weakness still showed in the careful way he moved. Beatrice sat beside the window with a cup of untouched coffee cooling in her hand. Doctor. Klein had left orders that Julian was not to overexert himself, which everyone in the room knew Julian would obey only until the next important question needed answering. Chen closed the door behind him. I brought printed stills from the kitchen footage. The digital copies are secured. One with your head of security, one with me, one in off-site storage. Eleanor is watching the original system like it's one of her grandchildren. Beatrice's mouth tightened. Eleanor has more sense than half the board. That may be understating it, Chen said. Julian held out his hand. Show me. Chen hesitated. You should understand something before you see these. The footage is clear enough to confirm Anya's account. It is not flattering to Celeste. Julian looked at him. Arthur, she put something in my food. I'm past worrying about flattering. Chen opened the briefcase and removed a folder. He laid several photographs across the rolling hospital table. Julian looked down and for a moment the room seemed to shrink around him. The first image showed Celeste entering the kitchen through the side hall. She was alone, her silver purse in one hand. Her posture was relaxed, almost casual. Anyone seeing only that frame might think she had come to check on dinner, just as she claimed. The second frame changed everything. Celeste stood beside the service counter, looking over her shoulder. On the counter were several plates, but one had been set apart. Julian's plate, the one with the gold flower. Near the rim, her purse was open. One hand was inside it. The third frame showed the packet, small, white, folded. Julian stared at it until the edges blurred. Beatrice rose from her chair and came closer. Dear God. Chen said nothing. He moved to the next photograph. In that one, Celeste's hand hovered above the sauce. The white powder was faint but visible as it fell. In the corner of the frame, half hidden by the pantry door, Anya stood small and still, her doll tucked against her body. Julian's throat tightened. He did not look at Celeste first. He looked at Anya. She was right there, he said quietly. Yes, Chen said, exactly where she said she was. The next photograph showed Celeste stirring the sauce with a spoon. The next showed her sliding that spoon beneath a folded towel. The final one showed a man standing at the rear service entrance. His face was turned slightly away from the camera, but his build, dark jacket, and posture matched Anya's description. Celeste was handing him an envelope. Beatrice touched the edge of the photo, careful not to move it. Who is he? We're working on that, Chen said. Security is running the image through private databases. We may have a partial plate from a vehicle near the service drive, but the angle is poor. Julian kept looking at the man in the photo. He wasn't a guest. No, Chen said. He used the rear entrance. Someone either let him in or he already had access. Beatrice looked up sharply. Celeste. That would be my assumption, Chen said. But assumptions won't hold in court. Julian pushed the table away with more force than he meant to. The wheels squeaked against the floor. She stood beside me, he said. She put her hand on my shoulder and watched me eat. Beatrice's face softened with pain. She watched Anya try to stop me, Julian continued, his voice low. She watched me take the plate back from that child. And she said nothing. The room went quiet. That was the cruelty he could not get around. Not the money, not the embarrassment, not even the threat to his life. It was the silence. Celeste had stood there and allowed a little girl to be humiliated for telling the truth. Chen carefully placed the photos back into the folder. The lab has the food sample. Dr. Klein requested expedited analysis because of the medical emergency. We should have a preliminary report soon. I want the spoon tested, too, Julian said. It's already sealed. The towel, yes. The trash. Eleanor had the kitchen waste secured before dawn. Security found nothing obvious yet, but they're sorting it under video. Julian looked at him. Good. The door opened slightly and Maria appeared in the doorway with Anya beside her. She had not meant to interrupt. It was clear from her face. A nurse had told them Julian was awake and Maria had brought Anya only to say goodbye before Beatrice's driver took them back to the estate. I'm sorry, Maria said at once. We can come back. No, Julian said. Please come in. Anya stepped into the room. Her eyes moved from Julian to the folder in Chen's hands. Children were often told less than they understood, and Anya seemed to understand that the adults had been looking at what she had seen. Julian turned one photograph face down before she came closer. Not because he wanted to hide the truth from her, but because she had already carried enough of it. Anya, he said, Mr. Chen brought pictures from the kitchen camera. Anya looked at her mother, then back at Julian. Did it show her? Julian nodded. Yes. Did it show the packet? Yes. Anya stood very still. Then she said, so now they know. The words were simple, but they reached everyone in the room. Maria closed her eyes for a moment. Baby. Anya looked at Julian. You believe me, now. Julian felt the question like a hand pressing against a bruise. Yes, he said, I believe you. She studied his face, making sure the answer was not just something adults said to make a child quiet. Then she nodded once. Chen crouched slightly so he was closer to her height, though he kept a respectful distance. Anya, I'm Mr. Chen. I work for Mr. Ashworth. You did something very brave last night. Anya held her doll tighter. I wasn't trying to be brave. I know, Chen said. Most brave people aren't. Maria wiped her palms against her jeans. Mr. Chen, is Anya going to have to talk to police? Eventually, perhaps, Chen answered carefully. But not alone, and not today. We will make sure it is done properly. With your permission and with people trained to speak to children. No one is going to put her in a room and frighten her. Julian looked at Maria. You have my word on that. Maria wanted to trust him. Julian could see the struggle in her eyes. Trust was not easy for people who could not afford mistakes. Before she could answer, Julian's phone buzzed on the table. Beatrice picked it up, checked the screen, and frowned. Celeste. The room tightened. Julian held out his hand. Let it ring. It stopped, then immediately began again. Beatrice's eyes hardened. Persistent. She always was, Julian said. The phone rang a third time. This time, a text followed. Beatrice looked at it and read silently. Her expression turned cold. What does it say? Julian asked. Beatrice hesitated, then handed him the phone. The message read, we need to talk before this gets uglier. You owe me that much. Julian stared at the words. Something inside him settled, not peacefully, but firmly. Arthur, he said, draft a notice. Celeste Dubois is not to enter my home, my offices, or any property controlled by Ashworth Group. Her access cards are revoked. Her guest permissions are cancelled. Her name is removed from every event list and household file by noon. Chen nodded. Already in progress. And the engagement? Beatrice watched her son carefully. Julian looked at the ring mark still faintly visible on his own finger from where he had worn the matching band Celeste had insisted on for the announcement photos. It's over, he said. No one spoke for a moment. Anya looked confused. You mean you're not marrying her? Julian turned to her. No, I'm not. Anya considered that with the seriousness she brought to everything now. Good. For the first time since the night before, Beatrice gave a small, unexpected laugh. It was brief, but real. Julian almost laughed, too, but the ache in his stomach reminded him of why they were there. Chen placed another document on the table. There's more we need to discuss when you're ready. Eleanor found records showing Celeste accessed your study last week. She told Eleanor she was looking for a photograph of your parents. My mother's engagement album is in her house, Julian said. Beatrice lifted an eyebrow, and she knows I would bite anyone who touched it. Exactly, Chen continued. So either Celeste lied casually or she was looking for something else. Julian's face hardened. What could she reach from the study? Personal correspondence, some legal files, possibly the secondary terminal if she had help. Chen did not say the rest, but Julian heard it anyway. If she had help, the man at the back door was no longer just a shadow in a camera frame. He was a door into a larger plan. Dr. Klein returned before Julian could ask more. I'm going to be unpopular and insist my patient rest. I need to make calls, Julian said. You need to remain alive long enough to make useful calls. Beatrice nodded. For once, Samuel and I agree. Julian looked as though he might argue, then glanced at Anya. She was watching him with the quiet expectation children bring to adults after adults have failed once already. He realized that if he wanted her to believe grown-ups could learn, he needed to start somewhere. Fine, he said. 30 minutes. An hour, Klein said. 45. Klein sighed. You bargain like a man who has never lost anything in his life. Julian's expression changed. I lost the illusion that I was safe in my own home. Klein's face softened. Then let the people who care about you help secure it. Maria gently touched Anya's shoulder. We should let Mr. Ashworth rest. Anya nodded and turned toward the door, then paused. Mr. Julian, yes, when you talk to Miss Celeste, don't eat or drink anything. The room went still for half a beat. Then Julian nodded solemnly. I promise. Anya accepted that and left with her mother. After the door closed, Julian leaned back against the pillows. His body was tired, but his mind was awake and moving quickly now. The plate had proved Anya's warning. The camera had proved Celeste's lie. The man at the rear door proved there was more than one hand in the dark. By the time the preliminary lab report arrived that afternoon, Julian was no longer shocked by what it said. The sauce on his plate contained a foreign compound that did not belong in food. Not enough in the single bite to kill him, but enough to make him sick. Enough. Dr. Klein explained that a full serving could have caused severe distress. Julian read the report twice. Beatrice read it once and walked to the window. Chen removed his glasses, polished them slowly, and said, "This is attempted poisoning." Julian looked at the folder of camera stills, then at the lab report, then at the phone where Celeste's message still waited unanswered. "No," he said quietly. "This is the beginning of finding out what she really wanted." And somewhere beyond the hospital walls, behind gates and polished doors, the house that had hosted an engagement dinner was now a crime scene, wearing flowers. The hospital room felt smaller that afternoon, not because the walls had moved, but because the truth inside it had grown too large to ignore. Julian Ashworth sat upright now, the IV still in place, but his posture no longer that of a patient drifting between weakness and recovery. The lab report lay open on the table beside him. The words were clinical, precise, stripped of emotion, but their meaning carried weight enough to silence any doubt. Foreign compound detected, not consistent with standard food preparation. Ingested quantity minimal. Larger ingestion may result in severe physiological distress. Beatrice stood by the window again, though this time she was not looking outside. She was thinking the way she had always done when something threatened her family. Not loudly, not emotionally, but with a kind of cold patience that had kept the Ashworth name intact through decades of business wars and personal loss. Arthur Chen closed the folder after reviewing the report one last time. "This confirms intent," he said. "Not an accident, not contamination. Someone put something in that dish deliberately." Julian did not respond immediately. He was staring at the indentation on his finger where his engagement ring had rested just the night before. It had already faded, but he could still feel it. "Not someone," he said finally. "Celeste." Chen did not argue. "The evidence points that way." Beatrice turned from the window. "Then the question is no longer what happened. It's why." Julian's gaze lifted. "And how far this goes." There was a quiet knock at the door before anyone could say more. One of Julian's security staff stepped in. A man named Riggs, broad-shouldered and efficient, the kind of man who spoke only when he had something worth saying. "Mr. Ashworth," Riggs said, "Miss Dubois is here." The room stilled. Beatrice's expression hardened instantly. "She was told not to come." "She insisted," Riggs replied. "She's in the waiting area. Says she won't leave without speaking to Mr. Ashworth." Chen exhaled slowly. "That was faster than I expected." Julian leaned back slightly against the pillows. "Of course it was. She knows we have something." Beatrice crossed her arms. "You're not seeing her." Julian looked at his mother. "I am." "No, you are not. She stood there while you poisoned yourself. You owe her nothing." Julian held her gaze. "I owe myself answers." Chen stepped in carefully. "If you do speak with her, it should be controlled. Recorded if possible. No food, no drink, no physical contact, and someone present." Julian nodded once. "You and Riggs stay in the room. Mom, you too." Beatrice did not like it. That much was clear, but she also knew her son well enough to understand that once Julian decided to face something, he would not turn away. "Fine," she said, "but I will not be quiet if she lies. I wouldn't expect you to be." Riggs stepped out to escort Celeste in. For a brief moment, the room held only anticipation, the kind that comes before a storm breaks when everyone knows the air is about to change. Then the door opened. Celeste Dubois entered slowly. She had changed her clothes. The ivory dress was gone, replaced by a soft gray coat and a pale blouse underneath. Her hair was still perfectly styled, but her makeup had been adjusted to emphasize the redness around her eyes. She looked like a woman who had not slept, who had been crying, who had been wronged. Or who wanted very badly to be seen that way. "Julian," she said softly. No one invited her closer, but she stepped in anyway, stopping a few feet from the bed. Her eyes moved briefly across the room, taking in Beatrice, Chen, and Riggs, calculating. "You brought an audience," she said, a faint edge beneath the sadness. Julian's voice was calm. "You didn't come here for privacy." Celeste pressed her lips together as if wounded. "I came here because you almost died." "I didn't," he said. "Because I only ate one bite." The words hung between them. Celeste took a step closer. "Julian, please, we both know this looks bad, but you're not thinking clearly. You were sick. You were scared. That child." "Stop," Julian said. It wasn't loud, but it was final. Celeste froze. "Do not talk about Anya like that," he continued. "Not in this room." Celeste's expression flickered. For a second, the softness slipped. Then it returned. "I'm not attacking her," she said carefully. "I'm saying she misunderstood what she saw." "Children do that. Children don't invent packets out of thin air," Beatrice said sharply. Celeste turned to her. "Beatrice, with all due respect." "None," Beatrice cut in. "You lost that last night." Chen cleared his throat lightly, trying to keep the exchange from escalating too quickly. "Miss Dubois, perhaps you should explain your presence in the kitchen." Celeste looked back at Julian, ignoring Chen. I told you already, I was checking your plate. I wanted everything perfect. Julian didn't move. You opened your purse. Yes. You took out a packet. No. Julian reached to the side table and picked up one of the printed stills Chen had left. He held it up just enough for her to see. Celeste's breath caught only for a fraction of a second. But it was enough. That's you, Julian said. That's your hand. That's my plate. Celeste stared at the image, then shook her head. That doesn't prove anything. It's a still frame. You can't see what's in my hand. There are more, Chen said calmly. A sequence. Very clear. Celeste's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Julian. You're going to trust security footage over me. I'm going to trust what matches reality, Julian replied. Her voice rose slightly. Reality. Julian, I am the woman you asked to marry you. And you are the woman who put something in my food. Silence. Celeste's composure cracked not into panic, but into something colder. You don't actually believe that, she said. Julian held her gaze. I didn't believe Anya either. That landed. Celeste took a step back. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, the performance thinning. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. A very expensive mistake. Beatrice straightened. Is that a threat? It's a fact, Celeste replied, not looking at her. Julian, you've signed things. You've trusted me with things. You think this ends with a broken engagement? Julian's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes sharpened. What have I signed? Celeste smiled faintly. Not warmly. Not kindly. Exactly, she said. Chen stepped forward now, his tone no longer polite. Miss Dubois, if you're implying access to Mr. Ashworth's financial or legal authority under false pretenses, I strongly advise you to be very careful with your next words. Celeste looked at him as if he were an inconvenience. I don't take advice from employees. I am not your employee, Chen said. And neither is the law. Riggs shifted slightly near the door. A subtle reminder of boundaries. Julian watched Celeste closely. The man at the back door, he said. Who is he? Celeste didn't answer. You handed him an envelope. He said, tonight has to work. What was supposed to work? Still nothing. Julian leaned forward slightly despite the discomfort. Was I supposed to get sick? Or something worse? Celeste's silence stretched. Then she sighed as if tired of the entire conversation. You're asking the wrong questions, she said. Then give me the right ones. She looked at him and for the first time there was no softness left at all. The right question, she said, is how much damage you're willing to do to yourself to prove I'm your enemy. Beatrice let out a sharp breath. Get out. Celeste didn't move. Julian spoke instead. The engagement is over. That landed harder than anything else. Celeste's jaw tightened. You're serious? Yes. And you think you can just walk away? I know I can. She studied him, measuring, recalculating. Then she gave a small, humorless laugh. You always did believe you were in control. I am, Julian said. Celeste shook her head slowly. Not this time. She turned toward the door, then paused, glancing back at him. When you figure out what you've really stepped into, she said, you'll wish you had listened to me instead of that child. Julian didn't respond. Celeste looked at Anya's empty space in the room, as if the girl were still there, then back at Julian. Good luck, she said softly, and then she left. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Beatrice said very calmly, she knows something we don't. Chen nodded, and she's confident enough to say it out loud. Julian leaned back against the pillows, his body still recovering, but his mind sharper than it had been in years. She's not afraid of being caught, he said. She's afraid of what we'll find if we keep looking. Riggs stepped closer. Sir, what are your instructions? Julian's gaze moved to the lab report, then to the photographs, then to the door Celeste had just walked through. Lock everything down, he said. Financial records, access logs, staff movements. I want a full audit of every document I've signed in the last 3 months. Chen nodded. I'll start immediately. And find that man, Julian added. I want a name. Riggs gave a short nod. Yes, sir. Beatrice watched her son, carefully. Julian, this may not be small. He met her eyes. I know. For the first time since the night before, there was no hesitation in his voice. The engagement had ended. The illusion had shattered. What remained was something far more dangerous than betrayal. It was a plan, and Julian Ashworth had just stepped directly into it. The shift from shock to strategy happened quietly, almost without announcement. By late afternoon, Julian Ashworth was no longer a patient recovering from a near poisoning. He was a man rebuilding control. The hospital room had turned into something closer to a command center. Chen had set up his laptop on the small table by the window. Riggs moved in and out with updates from the estate. Beatrice remained seated, but her stillness carried more authority than anyone else's movement. Julian watched them all, then said, start from the beginning. Chen looked up. The last 3 months. Yes. Every document I signed, every transfer, every authorization Celeste had access to. Chen nodded and began typing. We've already pulled your digital signature logs. There are irregularities. Julian's eyes narrowed. Define irregular. Documents signed late at night. Some from your secondary device, a few from your home terminal. Timing overlaps with evenings you reported feeling unwell. Dr. Klein, who had returned to check on Julian's condition, folded his arms. You had recurring symptoms, mild nausea, headaches, fatigue. You dismissed them as stress. Julian exhaled slowly, because they felt like stress. Klein met his gaze. They also matched low-dose exposure over time. The implication settled heavily into the room. Beatrice spoke first. You're saying this wasn't one night. Klein didn't soften it. I'm saying it's possible last night wasn't the first time. Julian leaned back slightly, absorbing it. She's been doing this longer. Chen turned the laptop toward him. These are the documents signed during that window. He scrolled slowly. Some are routine, others are not. Julian scanned the list. Most were familiar. Board approvals, investment renewals, foundation distributions. Then one line caught his attention. Temporary oversight authorization. Ashworth Foundation. What is that? He asked. Chen clicked the file. It grants Celeste limited supervisory authority over certain foundation funds in the event of your temporary incapacity. Julian's jaw tightened. I don't remember signing this. The signature matches, Chen said carefully. But the timing, he pointed. It was signed at 11:47 p.m. 3 weeks ago. Julian frowned. That night. He stopped. You called me the next morning, Klein said, complaining of dizziness and stomach pain. Beatrice turned slowly toward Julian. You signed that while you were unwell. Yes, Chen said, and that's not all. He opened another file. Conditional asset access clause. Julian read it once, then again. If I become medically incapacitated, Celeste gains temporary control over designated financial channels. Beatrice's voice dropped. How much control? Enough, Chen said, to move money, not permanently, but enough to redirect assets, initiate transfers, and influence decisions. Silence. Julian stared at the screen. She wasn't just trying to hurt me. No, Chen said, she was preparing for you to be unable to stop her. Klein added quietly, if your symptoms had been worse. If you had eaten more. Julian finished the thought. I might not have been in a position to question anything. Beatrice stood and walked slowly across the room. She planned this. Yes, Julian said, and she expected it to look natural. Chen leaned forward. There's more. We traced several small transfers from the foundation over the past month. Nothing large enough to trigger alarms individually, but together. How much? Julian asked. Just under 2 million. Beatrice stopped mid-step. From a children's fund. Chen nodded. Julian's expression hardened in a way none of them had seen before. Not anger alone, something colder, more deliberate. She used my foundation, he said. She used money meant for kids. Klein shook his head. That's a different kind of line. Julian didn't respond. He was already thinking ahead. Where did the money go? Layered accounts, Chen said. Shell companies. We're tracing them now, but there's a pattern. These accounts connect to a name that's come up before. Julian looked up. The man at the door. Chen nodded. We ran facial recognition from the footage. Partial match. Victor Sloan. Riggs, who had just re-entered the room, stopped. I know that name. Julian turned to him. Tell me. Financial operator, Riggs said. Not legitimate. Works in gray zones. Has been tied to structured fraud cases, asset diversion schemes, and high net worth targeting. Never convicted. Always disappears before charges stick. Beatrice's voice sharpened, and my future daughter-in-law was handing him envelopes in my kitchen. Julian let out a slow breath. So this wasn't random. No, Chen said. This is organized, Klein added. And patient. Julian looked at the lab report again, then at the photos, then at the files on Chen's screen. Every piece now connected into something larger. She needed me weak, he said. Not dead immediately, just impaired, confused, signing things I wouldn't normally sign. And eventually, Beatrice asked. Julian met her eyes. Eventually, she controls everything. No one disagreed. The room felt colder now, even under the hospital lights. Riggs stepped forward. Sir, security sweep of the house found something else. Julian nodded. Go on. Your study, Riggs said. We found a micro recorder under the desk. Chen froze. A recorder? Yes. Active transmitting. Beatrice's face went still. For how long? We're still analyzing, Riggs replied. But initial estimate, at least 2 weeks. Julian's voice dropped. She was listening. Not just listening, Chen said. Collecting leverage. Julian closed his eyes for a moment. Conversations, financial discussions, personal reflections. All of it potentially recorded. All right, he said, opening them again. We escalate. Chen nodded immediately. I agree. This goes beyond private legal handling. Police, Beatrice added. Klein corrected gently. Federal. Julian looked at each of them in turn. We do this carefully. No leaks. No public statements. Not yet. Why? Beatrice asked. Because she thinks she still has room to move, Julian said. And people like her are most dangerous when they feel cornered too early. Chen leaned back slightly. So we let her think she still has time. Yes. We watch. We document. We build the full case. And Victor Sloan? Riggs asked. We find him, Julian said. Before he disappears. A quiet settled over the room. Not uncertainty, but alignment. Maria and Anya returned later that evening, not knowing the full extent of what had been uncovered, but sensing the shift in the adults around them. Maria stood near the door again, careful as always. Mr. Ashworth, she said, we just wanted to check on you before heading home. Julian looked at them differently now. Not just with gratitude, but with recognition. You're not going anywhere tonight, he said. Maria blinked. Sir, I've arranged for you both to stay in the guest wing at the estate. Security will be there. You'll be safe. Maria hesitated. We don't want to cause trouble. You're not causing it, Julian said. You helped stop it. Anya stepped closer. Has the bad lady gone? Julian considered the question. Not yet, he said. But she will be. Anya nodded, accepting that answer. Then she said, you should be careful what you sign now. For a moment, the adults almost smiled. Julian nodded. That's very good advice. Maria placed a hand on Anya's shoulder. Say thank you. Anya looked at Julian. Thank you for listening this time. The words were simple, but they landed deeper than anything else that day. After they left, Julian sat quietly for a long moment. Beatrice watched him. You're thinking. I'm remembering, he said. The moment I took that plate back from her. Beatrice didn't answer. That was the moment everything could have ended differently. But it didn't, she said. No, Julian replied, because she didn't give up. Beatrice followed his gaze to the door Anya had just walked through. Children don't always understand the world, she said. But sometimes they see it clearer than the rest of us. Julian nodded slowly. Outside, the city moved as it always did, unaware, indifferent. But inside that hospital room, the pieces of a quiet, calculated betrayal had come together. And Julian Ashworth was no longer reacting. He was preparing, because now he understood something that changed everything. Celeste hadn't just tried to poison him. She had built a system around his trust. And systems like that didn't collapse with one truth. They had to be dismantled piece by piece. The city did not know it was being watched. Traffic moved in slow afternoon lines. People crossed streets with coffee cups in hand. Office buildings reflected the sun like glass mirrors, pretending nothing complicated ever happened inside them. It was an ordinary day for everyone except the handful of people who now understood that somewhere within that calm surface, a carefully built scheme was beginning to crack. Inside one of Ashworth Group's black SUVs, Julian sat in the back seat, one hand resting lightly against his abdomen, where the last traces of discomfort still lingered. He had insisted on coming. Chen had argued. Beatrice had refused. Dr. Klein had threatened to sedate him if necessary. But in the end, Julian had simply said, this started with me. It ends with me, and no one had found a way to argue that down. Riggs sat in the front passenger seat, speaking quietly into his earpiece. Confirm position. Yes. Keep distance. No contact unless instructed. On the tablet between them, a small blinking dot marked the latest movement of the account Chen had flagged. It wasn't a person. Not yet. But it was a trail. And trails led somewhere. Transfer originated from a financial kiosk, Riggs said. Public access terminal. That's unusual for someone at Sloane's level. Not if he doesn't want to be traced, Julian replied. Or if he knows someone is already looking, Chen added from the second vehicle behind them. Julian leaned back slightly, thinking. He wouldn't risk a visible move unless he had to. Riggs glanced at him, meaning, something changed, Julian said. Either Celeste warned him or he's reacting to something we haven't seen yet. The SUV slowed as it approached a narrow commercial street lined with older buildings. Laundromats, small grocery stores, a pawn shop with faded lettering. Not the kind of place where million-dollar transfers were supposed to pass unnoticed. Which made it exactly the kind of place they often did. Target location ahead, Riggs said. Camera picked him entering 10 minutes ago. Julian's eyes fixed on the entrance of a small storefront with tinted windows. No sign, no branding, just a door that looked like it didn't want attention. Victor Sloane, Julian said quietly. Riggs nodded. Most likely. Julian exhaled once. We don't go in loud. Understood. The SUV came to a stop half a block away. Riggs turned in his seat. Sir, you stay here. Julian didn't respond immediately. Julian, Riggs said more firmly. You're not fully recovered. If this turns, I'm not walking into anything blind, Julian said. But I'm not sitting here either. Riggs held his gaze for a second, then gave a short nod. You stay behind me. That's the idea. They stepped out into the afternoon air, which felt too normal for what they were about to do. Chen's car pulled in behind them. Two additional security men moved into position, casual in appearance, but precise in movement. The door to the storefront opened with a soft chime. Inside, the lighting was dim. Rows of terminals lined one wall, each separated by thin partitions. A few people sat at them, heads down, faces lit by screens. No one looked up when Julian entered. At the far end of the room, near a corner terminal, a man in a dark jacket sat slightly angled away from the others. Julian recognized him immediately, not from a clear face. From posture, from stillness, from the same quiet alertness Anya had described without knowing the word for it. Riggs moved first, approaching slowly, not aggressive but deliberate. Victor Sloane. The man didn't turn right away. Then he did. His face was sharper than the camera had shown. Early 40s, clean-shaven, eyes that didn't waste time pretending surprise. Well, Sloane said, leaning back slightly in his chair. That was faster than I expected. Julian stepped forward, stopping just behind Riggs. You're not hard to find when you start moving money in daylight. Sloane's mouth curved faintly. And you're not supposed to be on your feet yet. Plans change. Sloane glanced around the room, noting the positions, the exits, the number of people who weren't as casual as they looked. Then his eyes returned to Julian. She didn't finish the job, he said. Julian didn't react outwardly. You mean Celeste? Sloane tilted his head. You say her name like you didn't trust her. That's new. Not new enough. Sloane tapped the terminal lightly with one finger. You know, most men in your position would have been more careful about who they let that close. Julian's voice stayed level. Most men in my position don't expect someone at their table to poison them. Sloane gave a small shrug. That's the problem with comfort. It makes people predictable. Riggs stepped slightly closer. You're done here. Sloane didn't move. Am I? You're leaving, Riggs said. Sloane looked at Julian instead. You really think this ends with me? Julian's eyes didn't leave his. I think you're going to tell me where it goes next. Sloane smiled, but there was no humor in it. That's not how this works. No, Julian said, because from where I'm standing, your options are shrinking. Sloane leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You're thinking too small. This was never about just moving money. Then what was it about? Sloane studied him for a long moment, as if deciding how much to say. Leverage, he said finally. Access. Influence. You're not just rich, Ashworth. You're connected. Infrastructure. Health systems. Contracts. People don't just want your money. They want your reach. Julian felt the weight of that settle in. And Celeste. Sloane's expression shifted slightly. She played her part. Is that what you call it? It's what it was. Julian stepped closer now, just enough to change the space between them. She tried to poison me. Sloane didn't flinch. She tried to make you manageable. Riggs's jaw tightened. Julian's voice dropped. And if I had died? Sloane held his gaze. Then the next phase would have started sooner. Silence filled the space between them. The hum of the terminals, the faint sound of typing from the other users, the distant noise of the street outside. All of it faded under the weight of that answer. Julian spoke again, quieter now. You chose the wrong house. Sloane smiled faintly. No, I chose the right one. I just miscalculated one detail. Julian didn't need to ask. Anya, Sloane said. The name landed like a stone. Riggs stepped forward. We're done talking. Sloane raised his hand slightly, not resisting as Riggs and the other security men moved in. Careful, he said. You don't want to turn this into something public too quickly. Chen stepped in from the side. That decision isn't yours. Sloane looked at him, then back at Julian. You're going to want to move fast. Because if I'm sitting here, it means she's already moving somewhere else. Julian's eyes sharpened. Where? Sloane's smile returned, thin and controlled. That's the part you haven't earned yet. Riggs secured him, guiding him toward the exit. As they stepped back into the sunlight, Julian stood still for a moment, watching Sloane being placed into the vehicle. Chen came up beside him. We have him. That's a start. Julian shook his head slightly. No, that's a warning. About what? Julian looked down the street, then back at the car where Sloane sat, calm despite everything. If he's here, she's already moving. Chen frowned. You think Celeste's ahead of us? I think she planned for this, Julian said. And we just triggered the next step. Riggs closed the car door. We take him in. We get answers. Julian nodded slowly. Then we'd better do it fast. Because somewhere beyond the edges of what they could see, Celeste Dubois was no longer reacting. She was adapting. And people like her didn't run blindly. They moved with purpose, which meant the most dangerous part of this wasn't what had already happened. It was what was about to. Victor Sloane did not look like a man who had just been caught. That was the first thing Julian noticed as they moved him into the secured interview room back at the estate. Not a police station, at least not yet. Chen had made that decision carefully. They needed answers before this became public, before lawyers, media, and outside pressure complicated everything. Sloane sat in the chair with his hands loosely resting on the table, posture relaxed, eyes alert. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't protest. He didn't pretend. He waited. Julian stood across from him, no longer in a hospital bed, no longer reacting. Riggs remained near the door, silent and watchful. Chen stood to the side, tablet ready. Every word about to be recorded. You're calm, Julian said. Sloane gave a slight shrug. Panic is for people who don't understand the game. And you think you do. I know enough to recognize when the board changes. Julian pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. Then let's skip the performance. You told me this wasn't just about money. It isn't. Then talk. Sloane studied him for a moment as if measuring how much truth Julian could handle at once. You're a gateway, Sloane said finally. Not just a target. Julian didn't blink. Explain. Ashworth Group touches infrastructure, private healthcare, data security, logistics, Sloane continued. You're in rooms where decisions are made before the public ever hears about them. Contracts, approvals, expansions. People don't need to own your company to benefit from it. They just need influence over you. And Celeste was that influence. Yes. Julian leaned back slightly. By poisoning me, by weakening you, Sloane corrected. Slowly, subtly, enough that your judgment slips, your guard lowers, your dependence increases. Then she steps in, handles things, signs things, moves things. Chen spoke quietly from the side. Including funds from the foundation. Sloane glanced at him. That was just proof of concept. Beatrice, who had entered quietly and now stood near the back of the room, spoke for the first time. You stole from children to test your system. Sloane didn't look at her. We tested access. Julian's jaw tightened. And the endgame. Sloane's eyes returned to Julian. Control without ownership. That's the cleanest way to operate. No public exposure. No board fights. Just influence. Julian nodded slowly. And if I resisted? Sloane didn't hesitate. Then the situation escalates. Silence. Julian leaned forward slightly. You said something earlier. If you're here, she's already moving. Sloane smiled faintly. You remember. Where is she going? Sloane tapped his fingers lightly against the table. You're asking the wrong question again. Julian's voice dropped. Then give me the right one. Sloane's gaze sharpened. What does she have that you haven't found yet? That shifted the room. Chen looked up from his tablet. Riggs's posture changed slightly. Julian didn't speak for a few seconds. Then he said, documents. Sloane didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. Beatrice stepped forward. What documents? Julian's mind was already moving. The study, he said. She was in the study last week. Eleanor confirmed it. Chen nodded slowly. We checked the desk, the safe, the primary files. Not just what was there, Julian said. What used to be there? Sloane leaned back, watching him now with something closer to interest. There it is, he said quietly. You're catching up. Julian stood abruptly, turning toward Chen. Pull a full inventory of the study archives. Every file, physical and digital. Cross-check against backups. Already started, Chen said. But that could take time. We don't have time. Riggs stepped forward. Sir, if she took something, she'll use it. Julian nodded. Or leverage it. Beatrice's voice was sharp. Against who? Julian didn't answer immediately. Then he said, everyone connected to me. The weight of that settled heavily. Sloane watched them, silent now, as if his role in the conversation was already complete. Julian turned back to him. You're going to tell me exactly what she took. Sloane shook his head slightly. I don't know specifics. That wasn't my part. Then what was your part? Structure, access points, movement channels, making sure that when something needed to move, it moved clean. And now, Sloane's expression didn't change. Now I'm sitting here. Julian stepped closer. And she's not. No, Sloane said, she's not. The implication was clear. Julian turned to Riggs. Lock down all outbound data from the estate. No external access. No file transfers. I want every system isolated. Riggs nodded immediately. Audit. Arthur, Julian continued. Contact our internal tech team. Full audit. Anything accessed, copied, or removed in the last 30 days. Chen was already moving. I'll get them on secure line. Beatrice looked at her son. Julian, if she has something sensitive. She does, he said. We just don't know what yet. At that moment, Riggs's earpiece buzzed. He turned slightly, listening. Then his expression changed. Sir, he said, we have a situation. Julian's focus snapped to him. What kind of situation? Guest wing, Riggs said. Anya. The room shifted instantly. What about her? Julian asked, his voice sharper now. Security reports an unauthorized vehicle near the rear access road. It didn't enter the property, but it stopped long enough to observe. Then it left. Beatrice's face went pale. You think? I don't think anything yet, Riggs said. But the timing is wrong. Julian didn't hesitate. Get eyes on that vehicle now. Already in progress. Julian turned back to Sloane, his voice colder than before. Did she know about the girl? Sloane met his gaze. She knew the girl saw her. Did she plan for that? Sloane didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. Julian felt something shift inside him. Not fear, not exactly. Something sharper, protective, focused. Move him, Julian said to Riggs. Secure location, no contact. Riggs nodded and signaled the team. As Sloane was escorted out, he glanced once more at Julian. You're running out of time, he said quietly. Julian didn't respond, because for the first time since this began, the danger had changed shape. It was no longer just about him. It was about Anya. Minutes later, Julian was already moving through the estate faster than his body was fully ready for. Beatrice followed close behind despite Chen's attempts to slow her down. Julian, wait, no, he said, not this time. They reached the guest wing. Security stood outside, alert but controlled. Maria opened the door before Julian could knock. Her face showed it immediately. What's happening? She asked. Anya stood behind her, quiet, watching. Julian softened his voice, though urgency remained. We're increasing security. Nothing has happened, but we're being careful. Maria's eyes searched his face. This is about last night, isn't it? Yes. Anya stepped forward slightly. The bad lady. Julian met her eyes. She's still out there, he said. And we're making sure she can't hurt anyone. Anya nodded slowly, absorbing that. Then she said something that made every adult in the room pause. She knows I saw her. Maria tightened her grip on Anya's shoulder. Baby, no, Anya said quietly. She looked at me like she knew. Julian felt that settle heavily. He crouched slightly so he was closer to her level. You're safe here, I promise you that. Anya looked at him, not with fear, but with a kind of serious trust that felt heavier than any contract he had ever signed. Then you should find her fast, she said. Julian stood again. I will. As he stepped back into the hallway, Riggs approached with an update. Vehicles gone. Plate obscured. We're pulling street cams. Julian nodded once. Behind him, Maria closed the door to the guest room, holding her daughter close. Not out of panic, out of instinct. In the quiet that followed, Julian understood something with absolute clarity. Celeste Dubois had lost control of the plan, but she hadn't lost the will to finish it. And now, the one person who had exposed her was no longer just a witness. She was a risk, which meant the next move wouldn't be about money. It would be about silence. The night did not end when the servers slowed. It sharpened. Julian Ashworth stood in the dim glow of the secondary data hub, watching the stabilized stream on the monitor. One segment contained, 4 others still moving, still alive somewhere beyond his reach. But something fundamental had changed. For the first time since Celeste pressed that key, the system she built had resistance. And she would feel it. Node is holding, Chen confirmed through the comms. Sloane wasn't exaggerating. This segment is locked in delay. Julian didn't look away from the screen. How long? Hard to say. Minutes. Maybe longer if we reinforce it. Then reinforce it. Riggs nodded to the tech team. Do it. Behind them, Victor Sloane sat restrained, no longer speaking, no longer pretending control. His silence now was different from before. It wasn't calculation anymore. It was realization. Julian turned to him briefly. You bought yourself time. Sloane gave a faint, tired exhale. That's all anyone ever buys. Julian didn't answer. He was already moving. Where's the next closest endpoint? Chen responded immediately. Offshore cluster. Too far. Another domestic. North sector. But unstable. And one. He paused. One just went. Dark. Julian stopped. What do you mean dark? No signal. Gone from the grid. Riggs's voice lowered. Pulled manually. Or transferred again. Unclear. Chen replied. Julian's eyes narrowed. Or she shut it down herself. Beatrice's voice came through. Steady but sharp. Why would she do that? Julian answered without hesitation. Because she doesn't need all 5 anymore. Silence followed. Chen spoke carefully. You think she's consolidating? Yes, Julian said. She scattered the data to create pressure. Now she gathers what matters. Riggs stepped closer. Which means she's heading somewhere specific. Julian nodded slowly. Not running. Positioning. The room shifted again. Not chaos, not panic, but something tighter. Focused. Trace the dark node, Julian said. Trying, Chen replied. Residual signal only. Wait. A pause. We have a direction. Where? Back toward the city center. High-rise cluster. Julian didn't hesitate. We move. Riggs gave the order instantly. Pack up. We're relocating. As the team moved, Julian took one last look at the slowed data stream. One piece secured, the rest still in play. But now he wasn't reacting to her plan. He was stepping into it. The city lights blurred past again as the convoy cut through traffic. Faster this time, less cautious. There was no need for subtlety anymore. Celeste had escalated, so had he. Inside the vehicle, Beatrice's voice came through directly now. Julian, listen to me. I am. This ends tonight. Julian looked out the window. Yes, not just the data, she said. Her. A pause. Then Julian answered quietly. I know. Chen's voice cut in. We've identified the building. Private executive tower. Upper floors. Leased through layered entities. Same network. Security. Riggs asked. Minimal on paper, Chen said. Which means nothing, Julian said. He leaned forward slightly. She chose it. Yes, Chen said. And she expects you to come. Julian's expression didn't change. Good. The vehicles pulled into position. This time there was no hesitation. They entered. Elevator up. Higher than before. The silence inside was heavier now. Not uncertainty. Inevitability. The doors opened. A wide corridor. Glass walls. The city stretching beyond like a sea of lights. At the far end, a single office. Door open. Lights on. Julian walked first. No signal from Riggs this time. No waiting. Inside, Celeste Dubois stood by the window. No terminal. No servers. Just her. She didn't turn immediately. You're faster than I expected, she said. Julian stepped into the room. You're slower than you think. She smiled faintly and turned. You stopped one node. That's impressive. It's enough. No, she replied softly. It's not. Riggs and the team moved into position behind Julian. Celeste didn't look at them. Only him. You still believe this is about control? She said. Julian didn't answer. Then let me finish it for you, she continued. It's about leverage. And now I have it. Julian stepped closer. What did you keep? Celeste's smile faded slightly. The part that matters. Which is, she held his gaze. The part that makes people listen. Silence stretched. Julian's voice dropped. Who has it? Celeste shook her head slowly. Not who. Where? Julian didn't move. Then tell me. She studied him, searching for something. Weakness. Hesitation. Doubt. She didn't find it. That's the problem, she said quietly. You're not the same man who sat at that table. No, Julian said. I'm not. A long pause. Then Celeste exhaled, almost tired. For what it's worth, she said, you weren't supposed to survive that night. Beatrice's voice came sharply from behind. You'll answer for that. Celeste didn't look at her. I already have, she said. Riggs stepped forward. It's over. Celeste didn't resist this time. She knew the movement was done. The plan had played out. The pieces were where they would fall. Julian stood in front of her one last time. You lost, he said. Celeste looked at him. Not defiant, not broken, just clear. No, she said quietly. I changed what winning looks like. Julian held her gaze. Not anymore. Riggs moved in. Celeste was taken into custody. No struggle, no final words, just silence. Julian turned toward the window. The city stretched out below him, unchanged, unaware. Behind him, Chen's voice came through one last time. Julian, the remaining nodes. We're tracking them. With what we have now, we can contain the rest. Julian nodded slowly. Then we finish it. Beatrice stepped beside him. It's done, she said. Julian looked out at the lights. No, he said. Then his voice lowered. But it will be, because this wasn't just about stopping a plan anymore. It was about restoring what had been broken. Trust, control, truth. And somewhere in the estate, in a quiet guest room far from all of this, a little girl who had been told to stay silent had changed everything by refusing to. Julian turned from the window. Let's G.